Hi folks, Cyberpunk here, documenting our descent down the downward spiral into the toilet bowl of history. Where is it going to take us? Nobody knows. But what do we have on the menu tonight? We got a lot of things to talk about because as usual, the shit has hit the fan again. And, generally speaking, there's two things on the SHTF menu tonight. You can choose between the authoritarian police state, martial law thing, or you can get the without rule of law, anarchy in the streets, Molotov cocktails through the window while you're trying to eat your supper, if you can even afford supper. Or you can choose that. And I know, I said the word anarchy, so some smarty pants is going to come in the comment section and say, you don't know what real anarchy is. I get it. We all get it. Anarchy in your idealistic sense of the word means some kind of utopia. We get that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about lawlessness. Okay, you're going to get... Here's what shit hits the fan is going to look like. It's going to be like a sea of lawlessness. And there's going to be these fiefdoms throughout that sea of lawlessness, like Waterworld, where it's going to be like tyranny. Dystopian martial law police state tyranny in this sea of lawlessness. And you don't want to go outside the fences, because then the monsters are going to get you, that kind of thing, right? And then, you're going to get outside the fences and you're going to realize, oh, they lied to us. These people are free. I'm sure that's happened in a movie or two. We got a lot of things to talk about. I mean, things are really starting to heat up. A couple days ago, I made that video where I was talking about how the billionaires want universal basic income because they know what's coming. They don't want their heads on stakes. And oddly enough, they've now erected a guillotine in front of Jeff Bezos' house, one of his residences. I believe I don't know if it's in Washington. I can't remember exactly where it is. But one of his residences, they've erected this, guillotine to symbolize, off with their heads, right? And they're sharpening their pitchforks. And apparently there was a girl out there with a bullhorn chanting all kinds of things. And tomorrow it'll be 4 or 5 people. And then the next day it'll be 30 people. And then it's going to hit the news. And then it's going to be 500 people, right? And look, I know how capitalism works. And I know that Jeff Bezos, he's trying to build this massive empire. And his workers are pissed off because they don't feel like they're making enough money. And in order for Amazon to be profitable, because their margins are so slim, because they give everybody free shipping, some guy orders some cheap thing made in China worth $1 and he wants free shipping because we live in an entitlement society where everybody wants everything for free and cheap. And but no, we want jobs that pay really well too. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You just plain and simply can't. Anyways, that's why Amazon only makes 1 cent off of each transaction, or most of them, unless you're spending big dollars on there. And it's the accumulation of all those pennies that allows them to function. And so, yes, Jeff Bezos might on paper have a net worth of $200 billion, but realistically, I don't know how much of that is liquid currency. A lot of that is tied up in his company, and if he were to pull it out of the company, Amazon would collapse. So it's a bit of a situation, right? Where as a business owner myself, I can understand his situation, but I also understand his workers. They're genuinely pissed. They're like, hey man, we're seeing your assets here, and we're starving, and we want more money. And I've talked about this in the past, how it's an imbalance which is going to cause some sort of communist style Bolshevik revolution. Because this is what people don't understand, is that capitalism creates the circumstances for an imbalance, for a wealth inequality, which naturally begets communism. Now, just because a person criticizes some aspect, or I'm not even really criticizing it, I'm just analyzing it. Just because a person analyzes capitalism doesn't necessarily make them a communist. You can analyze something and entertain certain ideas without endorsing other ideas. So I'm not endorsing the communist view. I don't think that's the best view. What I'm saying is that what is likely going to happen is that if there's not some sort of redistribution on some level, that's, this guillotine in front of Bezos' house is a sign that people are starting to pick up on that. That it's not just, let's go protest Wall Street. Now they're starting to target specific people. Okay, once it gets to that point, then you know that things are really changing, like that it's getting a lot more serious. Now, personally, I think that with a publicly traded stock market, you have the potential to really get the best of both worlds, because everybody has access to the free market now. Let's say if Amazon did some kind of crazy stock split and they cut each worker a few shares and said, look, you now have a stake in this company and its success. You make people feel like they're a part of something, and maybe they'll be willing to make more sacrifices. But it's very hard for them to do that when they see you breaking records, keep adding them commas, and they ain't adding no commas, they adding debt, and now they can't get any more debt because the credit card companies are cutting people off. And what are you going to do when you have a nation built on debt and they're cutting people off? Well, the shizzy's going to hit the fizzy. That's what's going to happen. And I think the billionaires, though, they're smart enough, at least some of them are, to see the writing on the wall. And they see that, okay, there's 50% of people who are still doing all right. They got their 401ks, they got their retirement savings funds, and they're happy that they're riding this market up with the rest of us. But then there's these other 50% of people over here who ain't got shit, okay? And these people are getting mad. And they want to defund the police, and the police is the only thing between us and them. So who do you think, out of curiosity, Jeff Bezos, in spite of all the fronting that, these tech moguls do, in spite of all that, who do you really think they're going to vote for in the election? Come on, we all know who they're going to vote for, if they even vote. I'm sure they vote with their money. I'm sure for them, voting is mostly a symbolic thing because they realize no matter who's in charge, the outcome is largely going to be the same. Maybe a few degrees of difference, a few shades different. A thinking person would infer that Bezos is probably going to vote right because they're going to want protection. And we're moving into an era where that's a very real thing. I mean, this symbolic gesture of putting a guillotine in front of Bezos' house, that might seem like, an innocuous thing, but this is how it starts. Bezos already spends millions of dollars on personal security. He says he only spends about 1.6 million, but there's definitely a lot more that's getting spent. I mean, this is a tax write-off for them. So they can pretty much, I know Zuckerberg, I think Zuck spends like $25 million a year on personal security. So it's a serious thing for these guys, right? These guys got bunkers, they got private security guards, they got all kinds of guys with all kinds of guns around them. These guys are the biggest preppers on the planet. So take no shame in going and checking out that Canadian Prepper channel, because you got to catch up to these guys. They're ready. Are you? That is the question. Anyways, it's turning into a very feudal situation where you're going to be forced, if you accumulate all this wealth, if you want to keep it, you got to build yourself a castle. And so that's what I'm saying. It's going to be like these pockets of tyranny and a sea of lawlessness. It's hitting the fan all around the world, man. Belarus, okay? Now Russia's going to be moving in there. With all this shit going on in the United States, other countries are going to start making moves. You got Lebanon in crisis. You got Thailand in crisis. I think the other one was Turkey is in crisis. Okay, Europe, they're protesting the whole COVID thing, and you got David Icke out there acting like he's Paul Revere, trying to galvanize the people to do God knows what. Basically just shout and scream, and a bunch of them are holding placards that say 5G causes COVID, and right next to him, there's a guy with a sign that says COVID is a hoax. So which one is it? And so just a bunch of misguided people with all this socioeconomic pent-up energy. That's what it is, but they're channeling it into these bullshit issues. And I think Ike is just a bullshit artist, to be quite frank with you. That's all I think he is. Not that I think the guy should be censored, or most people shouldn't be censored. Unless you're outright, yelling fire in a crowded theater, I don't think you should be censored. Unless you're doing something which is, actually like doxing someone and saying, go and do this thing to this person. If it's leading to people going and doing stupid things in the real world, sure. But we're going to talk more about that particular issue later. We got to talk about this Portland shit that's going down. It seems like the incidents are becoming more frequent. So you have the shooting that was in Kenosha. Now you have, there was a murder in Portland last night. I guess by the time this video makes it to you, it's going to be 2 nights ago after the Trump rally there. You got the Trump cavalry riding in down the street, being greeted by the Antifa infantry. There was bear spray. There was stuff thrown. There was a lot of people who were beaten. Lots of beatings. There was people who were just, like being assaulted, randomly walking down the street by these idiots who continue to... it's so stupid. It's as if they want to get Trump elected. Everything right now is working in Trump's favor. And I don't criticize Trump for the reasons that most of the Democrats criticize Trump for. Most of the Democrat criticisms of Trump is just bullshit. Because, yeah, you could say that, maybe he could have done something different at the beginning, but it would have played out just the same. Because here in North America, we are just not, our system is geared towards, entrepreneurship, free enterprise, freedom, liberty, all that kind of stuff. And I say North America, I include Canada as a state of the United States, okay? In that, we cannot be governed. It's like herding cats. The Surgeon General could have came out first thing and said, everybody wear a mask. And then people would have rebelled against that. So no matter how you sliced it, shit would have went down the same way it went down. And then, of course, you have the left's tacit approval of these protests, which, of course, just spread it more. So, you can't blame Trump for the outbreaks and then, encourage the most vulnerable populations, statistically speaking, to get COVID and to die from it, encourage them to go out and riot and protest. You just can't have it both ways. So what I would criticize Trump for is treating every situation like it's a nail and he's a goddamn hammer. No, every situation, if the first thing you go to is, well, I'll just send in the military. I'll send in some poor schmuck making enough money to probably get by, put him in some really shitty, stressful situation because I didn't have the verbal jujitsu skills to quell this tension in a proactive way. Instead, my first go-to thing is increase the police funding, increase the military, increase this, increase that. That doesn't get to the root of the problem, and it never will. That's what people need to understand. So I don't criticize for Trump for the bullshit reasons. The only reason why I would criticize Trump at this point is that he's unimaginative in his ability to bring people together. And I sincerely think Trump actually does have the capability to bring people together. There was a time when the hip-hop community embraced Trump. He was referenced in all kinds of rap songs. So, but people have forgotten all that. So Trump has the ability to, even the whole Kanye and the White House thing, that was kind of nutty, but still, he has that ability to connect with people if he wanted to. But instead, he's doing this whole dog whistling thing, right? When I worked in mental health, and you had a problem with somebody was tweaking out, in psychosis, ready to blow their top, there were times when it was justified to call the police. But if the first thing you did when shit got hot was to threaten to call the police, because that's what you would do first, you would say, if you don't start behaving, we're going to have to call the police. If the first thing you did, you weren't well respected if you did that. Not just by the clients, but by your coworkers. Because it implies that you're unimaginative and you're scared, and that's like your only go-to thing. And all that typically does is escalate the situation. There's ways to diffuse a situation without just putting more government people in the streets. And so that's my main problem with Trump. It's a sign of weakness, not strength, to put some other poor schmo with a gun in the line of fire. It doesn't take courage to do that, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying that Joe Biden would do any better. Joe Biden's going to say whatever he can to get elected. I'm all about the third candidate that doesn't exist yet. And I don't even live in the country, so, I people say I don't have a dog in the fight, but I do, because we're like this little tiny tugboat that's bound to the United States super tanker. And as soon as you guys go down, I mean, we're going right down the next day. So we do have a dog in the fight here. So yeah, don't take my criticisms for Trump as like blanket support for Biden either. I know a lot of people think about these things black and white, and you're one way or the other. Because in the United States, it's all about sports. It's all about my team or your team. And that's been deeply, deeply ingrained. And I think that's part of the reason why, sports are so encouraged. Because they want people to think about, us versus them. Things are one way or the other. It's not like this spectrum where there's nuance. It's one way or the other. But the fact is, some party has to take a hit and be willing to concede some of their votes so that a third party, a pragmatic party, can emerge, which actually makes sense. Because there's so many issues that shouldn't be divided. Like, let's say there's certain things I like on the right. I like, the pro-Second Amendment thing. I like that. But at the same time, I also know there are systemic barriers. And when I say systemic, I don't mean in the sense that, if you're a woman and you do the same job as a man, you're not getting paid as much. I don't mean like there's outright discrimination. There are historical things, okay? Maybe we'll save that for another video, because I'm already going to end up probably pissing off half the planet with this video. See if I have any subs left tomorrow. We'll go down that road at some point when I'm ready. But, there's definitely levels to this. And unfortunately, I think both sides are just using the colored person. I was listening to a preacher on a video, and I'm not religious, but sometimes I find that, these preachers say some interesting things. And one of the things that this guy was saying, he was a black preacher, and he said, don't think of yourself as a black person, because there's so many negative associations with the term black. Not only are you not like physically black, technically you're not black, you're a browner, right, than black. And by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm a mixed race person. You can go check me out on the Canadian Prepper channel, 420,000 subs and counting. For any of you guys who like that 420, I don't necessarily like the 420. I used to, but I don't now. But go check out that channel and you'll see who I am. So, I got a license. I got a license to talk about certain things. I don't always use it, but when I do, I do. So, like I said, this preacher is talking about, don't call yourself black. Because when you call yourself black, you're basically unconsciously saying, I am everything that goes into the definition of the word black. And if you go look up the dictionary definition of the word black, as was the case, I think this was the opening scene in the movie Malcolm X, if I'm not mistaken, is that he's looking at the dictionary definition of the word black. And of course, if you go and look it up, it's not that good. So if you're referring to yourself that like that all the time, that might, some way, shape, or form, have some sort of negative outcome in terms of how you view yourself and how you behave. Okay? So he's saying, don't see yourself as that, and I would have to agree. I know I said I wasn't going to go down this road, but here we go. Maybe it's time. I don't know. I do think that we got to see ourselves as human beings. And I don't think that, in that regard, I don't think Black Lives Matter helps, even though I acknowledge there's definitely an implicit bias towards colored people in the United States. My solution would always be, don't spend all of your time just protesting. Spend your time improving yourself. You can do one of two things. You can demand a handout, and I know people aren't necessarily demanding a handout, they're demanding change, whatever that form that comes in. I don't know if they have a specific set of goals or what. You could demand other people change, or you could pull yourselves up by your proverbial bootstraps. And I know it's not easy. And, I know it's going to be an uphill battle, and it's going to be cold, and it's going to be windy, and there's going to be people trying to take you down along the way, and there's going to be thousands of paper cuts and microaggressions that are going to make your life a living hell on the way up. But it's that, or basically you get nowhere, is what I'm trying to say. But imagine a scenario like this. You're in a crisis situation, and the military truck comes by, and you're in the crowd of people who's hungry and desperate, and they're handing out provisions, okay? And you have an option. You can go and stand in line every day for 6 or 7 hours or whatever it takes to make sure you get your provisions, or you can spend that 7 hours a day planting a garden, sowing seeds, working, maybe every other day going and maybe getting your rations, right? Just enough to survive, just enough to get by. That's the difference between spending all of your time out there protesting and rioting and expecting that other people are going to change the situation, when you need to be focused on the grassroots level of your communities. And just focus on that, man. If we can just focus on that, things would change for the better. But I can tell you right now, the people who are trying to get your vote, they don't want that. The Democrats don't want black people rebuilding from the ground up because they know how much of a success it would actually be. All I know is that things are progressing at a rate which I think is unprecedented. I never thought it was going to, I've talked about how it was going to get bad, but I didn't think it would get this bad this fast. And it's progressed now to the point where, we had that spur of the moment incident with Kyle, what's his face, and who's now become a martyr. And that's the problem, is all these people, the victims are becoming martyrs, and the vigilantes are becoming martyrs, if you want to call them that. Some people take offense when I call them vigilantes, whatever. The people on both sides are being martyred. And that's a problem. And now, with this most recent incident in Portland, and you're just having random people beat up like it's the LA riots or something, that's when things are starting to heat up. And because we have social media nowadays, I think it makes it worse. These images spread so fast, it riles people up even more. See, back in the day, you'd see the one thing of the guy hitting somebody with a brick, like in the LA riots. You've seen a few clips here and there of what was going on. But not like today, where there's just like this endless conveyor belt of live footage and live streams of the shit hitting the fan. And all sorts of stuff to get you pissed off, no matter what side you're on. So what's going to happen next time is there's going to be an even greater armed presence. And the Antifa and the rioters, they're going to bring out more weapons, and you're just going to see these situations escalate and escalate. And if you live in an urban environment, in all seriousness, you should have a bug out plan. At this point, I think a bug out plan is very well warranted, and expect to have to drop everything at a moment's notice and take everything that you are going to want to take, and like any keepsakes, things of that nature. You need to be able to get out of Dodge fast. Because if they're burning your house down or your apartment building down, especially if you live in an apartment, I'd be very concerned right now if you live in one of these hotbeds of activity. Because all it takes is one fire to start, and that could potentially be a bad day. So just have a plan to get out of Dodge, and just have a plan and somewhere to go to. Even if it's just a hotel out of town, or with some family members out of town. And of course, you want to get ahead of it. So if you know of any rallies that are coming to take place, and if they're going to be sizable, then you might want to be proactive and get out while you can. Because people on this channel, we're moderate. We're the third party on this channel. And that wouldn't be a hill that I'd be willing to die on. If it came down to saving your own community, then I could absolutely understand wanting to defend your community like that. And just don't be a pawn in somebody else's chess game is all I'm saying. I know it's a fine line to walk so that you're defending your community, but at the same time you're not playing into the plan of divide and conquer. It's hard to do that. It's hard to walk that line. But I guess that's a burden we all have at this point in time. And it hasn't really hit too hard in Canada here yet. We're still in kind of the protest phase. Here it's more Aboriginal rights issues, if anything. In Toronto, there's a much more mixed, diverse situation they got going on there, which could potentially escalate into something. Whatever SHTF situation you guys have down there, we will have it. It'll just be in a lighter form up here. The problem is we don't have all the cool stuff and all the cool privileges. Actually, they're not privileges. Where you come from, they're called rights. We don't have all those there. So as much as you guys have the chaos, you also get the fun stuff. You also can own miniguns. We can't own miniguns. That'd be nice. Now, on the topic of the COVID-19 protests in Europe, if you don't know, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that have taken to the streets in multiple countries, from Germany to Britain, and they're protesting the restrictions that remain on people as a result of the first wave of the virus. People are upset about it, but it's not just that they're upset about that. There's people who are outright denying that it's a thing. There's people who think that it's, 5G caused or whatever other nutty theories are out there. And you guys know that I'm no fan of the nanny state. I don't want to be chipped. I don't want to be tracked. I don't want to be traced as much as the next guy. I'm fully aware of the Big Brother intersecting with the Aldous Huxley and Brave New World future that awaits us. I don't want that. I want less government, not more government. But at the same time, these people who deny that it's an issue at all go too far, in my opinion. And they potentially run the risk of making the problem much worse. Now, I, for one, am not going to be first in line to get needled when the government says they've found a cure. You can count me out. Other people, if you want to do that, fine. But I'm also not going to sit there and try to refute the science of vaccination itself, which is obviously proven, to be effective to some extent or another. Are there side effects? Maybe. But that's another story. But I'm not going to be one of these people who's outright denying that it's an issue altogether. Even if you believe that, one would be wise to err on the side of caution and at least wear a mask to one of these protests. Because, if you think about it, one of the best way to get rid of your opposition is have them all rally in one place, standing close together, with no personal protective equipment, infecting themselves with a virus that will take them out. If you want to be really sinister about it, that would be the way to do it. So I think that this is how it's going to spread, and we're going to see the convergence of all this craziness at the exact same time, right around the time when the election is hottest. That's when the pandemics are going to be hottest. That's when, the Russians and the Chinese are going to start making moves, because it's a great time for them to do it when the United States is in complete disarray and is too busy putting out fires, both literal and civil, in their own country to cater to the rest of the world with their military and back up their allies out there, like Taiwan or Hong Kong, Belarus. That Russia and China are going to make some moves. And that could potentially escalate the Cold War situation. And then, of course, we have the economy, which by that time is going to be teetering on the brink of collapse. We're talking about the stock market. The economy is already fucked. Okay. The stock market is going to follow in suit at some point. Any day now, we're going to see a big, big correction, I think. Now, because the money printer, because Mr. Powell is stepping on the gas, it seems. Maybe they're going to push that out. Maybe they're going to push it out till after the election. We'll see. But either way, plus or minus 30 days before or after the election, there's going to be a pretty sizable spike in SHTF related incidents, we'll say. And of course, at that time, you also get hurricanes, you get wildfires, you get a lot of weather anomalies at that point too. Maybe the crops don't come in as planned. You got, if the pandemic affects harvests this year, that could potentially be an issue, among a variety of other things, okay? So what we need to do is we need to stay prepped. We need to stay vigilant. Don't get soft in these times, because, one day things can be fine. The next day, shit's getting thrown through your window. Anyways, let me know what your preference is in the comment section. Would you prefer, the authoritarian fascist thing, or would you prefer just lawlessness without rule of law, every man for himself? Let me know. And remember, that the whole police state martial law thing, it's not just going to be, okay, there's guys on the street while you walk to work protecting you. It's probably going to be them enforcing other things as well. Making sure you comply with other things. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer, having to worry about surviving on your way to work every day? I guess most people would probably go with the guys with guns on the street thing, because that would be the soft kill way to go. But I don't know. I guess everybody's different. Some people want the Wild West. Some people want the purge. Anyways, guys, I don't want to leave you fully depressed and thinking that there's no hope. There's always hope. And it's time like these where we really get to test the limits of our spiritual resilience. And it allows us an opportunity to reflect on what's really important in our lives. And I think that's important, because at the end of the day, right before they put you in the box, you're going to be looking at your life. And a lot of the shit that you thought was important is not going to be important at that moment in time. I do believe that right before we die, it becomes clear to us, clear as day, what we wasted our life doing. Anyways, guys, you take care and hug your family, hug your kids, hug the ones you love. Do something fun tomorrow, and to try to take your mind off of all this chaos, but stay ready. Thanks for watching. Cyberpunk out.